Welcome back to the Week 5 Waiver Wire here at 4for4 Football. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, and today we are back to review our options on what is already getting whittled out on the waiver wire. As always, you can head to 4for4.com to see the column there every Monday afternoon that stays updated through Thursday morning. And you can do so by using the promo code YouTube that still gets you 25% off any subscription at 4for4. Let's start with the cover boy and Jaleel McLaughlin, because we are already here in week 5, and it's important to note that although everyone looks at his usage once Javonte Williams suffered his hip injury in the first half, because from that point forward, McLaughlin out-touched Samaje Perine 8-7 and recorded 2 targets apiece as the team's two-headed backfield, we still have to note that McLaughlin was used on the team's first drive when Javonte and Perine were both available. And in those 2 touches in the first drive, he recorded a 6-yard run and an 18-yard touchdown reception that he received at the line of scrimmage. McLaughlin has only recorded 14 carries so far this year, but he's forcing a missed tackle on every other carry, the second highest rate among 71 running backs with 10-plus carries to date. He's also exploded for 10-plus yard runs on 3 of those 14 carries. So, and being Sean Payton's pet project, we don't even have to squint to see McLaughlin not only blossoming into a larger role eventually, but maybe even taking this backfield over altogether. He's a player we should be targeting atop waiver wires this week, regardless of Javonte Williams' hip injury. Another player I think everyone will run to the waiver wire for is Jameson Williams, because Williams had his, what was initially a 6-game suspension for gambling, negated, and he was reinstated as early as week 5. Go back to the preseason when the Lions reportedly planned to play him a lot because of his suspension and because he basically has no NFL experience to date. Including his lone appearance in the preseason, he's totaled just 63 routes with Detroit. And that one start in August, he recorded 2 catches on 7 targets before straining his hamstring. But we should still be trying to pick him up with an eye on the second half of the season, regardless of what we think about his immediate future. Williams didn't test at the combine because he was still recovering from that torn ACL suffered in his final year in college. But remember, he led the FBS with 4 touchdowns of 70-plus yards in 2021 and averaged 20 yards per catch on 78 receptions. His 104.8 receiving yards per game were also the most of any Crimson Tide player. And think about how many NFL players Alabama has churned out under Nick Saban. And those 104.8 receiving yards per game were the most since Amari Cooper averaged 91.1 in 2010. So we should definitely target Reynolds, Williams for the second half of the season. Having said that, I still think Josh Reynolds is the better short-term player. If you throw away Reynolds' egg that upset us all in the box score while he was battling through his groin injury in week 3, Reynolds has actually earned the second highest target share, 20.5% in Detroit, and averaged 15.1 PPR points per game, which would rank as the wide receiver 18 in points per game this season. He also leads the Lions with 2 end zone targets. Short term, Josh Reynolds is the better play over Jameson Williams. Long term, if you don't need a flex option, you should be targeting Jameson Williams for his ceiling. Another player that popped up with some surprising usage this week was Chuba Hubbard for the Panthers. And Hubbard evenly split touches with 16 apiece with Miles Sanders on Sunday. But I do question if Sanders' groin injury had anything to do with that. Prior to week 4, Sanders' share of Carolina's backfield touches actually increased in his first 3 games. 66.6%, 70.8%, and then a season high 82.3% of their backfield touches in week 3. Hubbard is still worth sprinkling on just in case this shocking usage actually was a shift in the team's approach in their backfield. And for reference, he's been really good. 44 running backs this year have recorded 25 carries, and only Devon Achane, Breece Hall, and Hubbard have averaged at least 4 yards after contact per attempt. There's a real chance Hubbard plays himself into a timeshare regardless of Sanders' injury. But it does seem more likely, at least in the short term, that Sunday was a one-off increase because of that injury to Sanders. Either way, I'm targeting everyone I've already talked about over Michael Wilson. Because Wilson did register a season-high 17% target share with 2 touchdowns against the Niners. But if we peek under the hood, you'll see that Rondale Moore, although he didn't record a single catch in that game, actually did register a season-high 86% route rate and 2 wide sets ahead of Wilson, who only ran around on 71% of Josh Dobbs' dropbacks. And the Cardinals still rank 18th in points per game and 9th in yards per play, despite facing Dallas and San Francisco the past 2 games. Believe it or not, Arizona's offense has been above average. We want to target the players that are earning targets in their offense. But Wilson's immediate emergence, I feel like we'll have to wait a tad longer for, based on Sunday's usage. Even though his ceiling should still be chased in 12 and 14 team leagues as a stash option, since we think he'll eventually play over Rondale Moore. Let's get into some deep league additions to close the show, because Mike Evans suffered a hamstring injury, and the Bucs, of course, are going on their bye week and will return in week 6. Maybe Evans in his age 30 season recovers by then. But just in case, we need to keep an eye on 22-year-old Trey Palmer. Palmer registered a career-high 32.7% target share with 98 percentile straight line speed with a 4.33 40 time at 6 foot, 192 pounds in his lone and final year at Nebraska. And he's the next man up if Mike Evans' hamstring injury lingers beyond the team's bye week. Palmer didn't earn a target in the second half, so he didn't pop up in the box score. But he quietly matched Chris Godwin over the last 2 quarters for a team high mark in routes run in that blowout against New Orleans. He has to be worth a speculative stash if you're in a deep 10-man bench league. Rashee Rice is also someone I think is worth adding, because only 1 week after he ran 15 routes to Sky Moore's 16 in the first half, before that game against the Bears became a blowout in week 3. On Sunday night in primetime, Rice ran just 2 fewer routes than Sky Moore. 44% route rate to Moore's 49%. But what we're seeing now is a trend, because even though Rice is 4th among Kansas City's wide receivers in total routes run, he leads them all, Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Justin Watson included, in fantasy points per game. Rice is the player, if someone is bound to break out among this group. Maybe they don't, but Rice is the one we should be betting on long term, and that's worth adding. I also think for dealing with tight end bye weeks this upcoming week, Tyler Conklin is worth an add, because Conklin has averaged 5.5 targets per game from Zach Wilson in Wilson's 3 full starts the past 3 weeks. And now, a lot like Wilson, for those looking for a quarterback streamer, if you're in that position, Conklin gets an elite matchup against this miserable Broncos secondary that not only allowed Justin Fields to eclipse 300 passing yards for the first time in his career, but has permitted the second most fantasy points per game to enemy tight ends, despite allowing only the 14th most catches. Conklin has one of the higher floors of any tight end league in the league if you're looking for an option in PPR leagues. And finally, in your deeper tight end premium leagues, One tight end for the Falcons is tied with Drake London for the team lead in targets with 14 since week 2 in their last 3 games. And only one Falcons tight end has earned an end zone target in that time too. And that, of course, is Jonnu Smith, who has outscored Kyle Pitts 17.4 fantasy points to 12.2 in their last 3 games together. Whether Pitts is healthy or not is irrelevant because he's still the tight end 32 in points per game and not worth our time right now. Jonnu Smith is the better addition and better start over Kyle Pitts, given that it's Jonnu who has literally doubled up Pitts in yards per route run to this point. And yes, I am sad about it too. Reminder, for more deep league notes for your 12 and 14 leagues, we are at 4for4.com, and the waiver column will consistently be updated after Monday Night Football and through Thursday morning to make sure you're covered, whether you have Tuesday or Wednesday night waivers. We'll be back for our weekly preview show Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. But until then, you know the rules. Be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.